You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tussaw from RCM Asset Management, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the option block.
All right, everybody, that rockingest of tunes means it's time for the rockingest of shows, to coin a new phrase. Yes, it's time for the option block, your bi-weekly source for all the options fun that you can handle at least twice a week. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. And, of course, you guys can always, if you're listening to this, first off, welcome. Secondly, you got a lot of great archives to check out. If you're new to the program, you can get them all via the main feed, but, of course, the easiest place to get everything that we do, the mothership, the flagship, theoptionsinsider.com. While you're there, you can sign up for our main network feed that has all the shows. You're pushing 15 on there these days, so Options News Rundown, of course, our Advisors Option, Vol Views, double dose of Option Block, Options Boot Camp coming roaring back to the network these days. All sorts of fun stuff. Easy place to get that, of course, the main network feed. So wherever you're listening to this, if you've already done so, ballyhoo for you. If you haven't done so yet, head on over to wherever you're listening to this and just take it up a notch. Just type in our network, and you'll find all that goodness. And then I promise you, you'll never want for options content, at least in the audio format, ever again. And of course, for those of you who need a little bit extra option block, a little bit extra options goodness in your lives, we bring it to you live every Monday and Thursday, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, via the old Mixlr, MIXLR. Just grab that link, set it and forget it. Follow us over there in Mixlr if you are so inclined. And you too can join the live party. That is the option block. Speaking of live parties, it was a live party quite literally last week. We came out of the heels of the big Option Pit Pro Trader Extravaganza Summit. Call it what you will. Pretty fun stuff. Hopefully you had a chance to check that one out. We did try to get a live stream going from there. Some people said it worked pretty well. It was just literally just took the phone, turned it on, and pointed it at us on the main table, and whatever we got, we got. So if you enjoyed the live stream, I'm glad you could actually I'm glad it actually worked. I was kind of surprised. I wasn't really, plus the connectivity down there on the floor of the SIBO, a little bit dicey sometimes, but it all seemed to work out, which is always good. All right, and joining me on the old program to get all British today, let's start off. Everyone's joining us from the magic of old 20th and indeed 19th century technology known as telephone, listeners. So let's see who we got. Let's dial up the old phone. Starting off, I think he's in his mobile HQ today outside of St. Charles, Illinois, where we're joined by Uncle Mike Tussaw from RCM Wealth Advisors. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here. Happy Monday to everybody. Markets are open. God is good. America is good. Gotta love the option block. These are my favorite. Some of my favorite hours of the week are when we're doing the option block.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And we'll get them in a more stable environment, listeners, when the trucks aren't running them off the road. And then we'll beam them in. Also joining us, he was in his car. Who knows where he is now? Let's find out. It's the Greasy Meatball, Mr. Mark Sebastian. Welcome to the show, sir. And have you recovered from the extravaganza that was the Option Pit Pro Trader Summit, sir?
I have, and it's great to be here. And what a day, huh? Just absolute craziness abounds. And by that, I mean yet another day. We're now 4 days in a row with the VIX below 9. That's some excitement.
If that's not excitement, sir, I don't know what that is just the heart. Yeah, as you mentioned, well, we'll save it for the trading block. But spoiler alert, VIX cash, kind of low. All right. And last but not least, also joining us on the old program, hasn't been on in a while. We're happy to have him back. Good old Ophir Gottlieb. He's the major domo over there at Capital Markets Labs. They run a cool back tester you guys may want to check out called the CML Viz. Ophir, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. First day of Q4, all-time highs in all of the major indices. What a great day to talk options, right?
What a great day to talk options. Really quick before we dive into, I know you got a big webinar coming up. Why don't you give it a plug here at the top of the show before we go into the meat of the show proper, sir?
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a webinar coming up. You can go to cmlviz.com/TOI, the Options Insider. And we're going to be talking about the science behind option trading, how to find momentum ahead of earnings, when to trade options, when to exit, full strategies all the way through, and the power of backtesting. The webinar is free to all. You can just go to cmlviz.com/TOI for the Options Insider, and you'll learn more. That's it.
There you go. I like that acronym, TOI. I'm kind of partial to it myself. Check it out. Again, it's free. If you like all the back testing talk we've been doing a lot of it on the network of late, and that's pretty crucial to actually getting some good options trades on, is seeing how they perhaps may have performed in other market scenarios. There you go. Join them on the 18th, I believe. cmlviz.com/TOI to learn more. All right. Since we're talking some trading, let's get into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck was trading in today's market. A bit of a weird day. Obviously, a lot of crazy news hitting the old tape today, but none of that really seeming to derail the endless beast that is the bull these days, continuing to propel most of the major indices, pretty much all the major indices, up into the green. Tech-heavy NASDAQ, probably the slightest, the most meager of the bulls on the screen today, only up pretty much fractionally on the day. S&P kind of splitting the uprights there, up about 0.3%, well north of that magical, mythical 2,500 level. And, of course, the Dow leading the charge, up nearly 0.75 percentage point. All that green on the screen, though, means VIX cash kind of can't really make up its mind today. It ends up pretty much close to unched on the day, even though it dipped as low intraday as 9.37. Yes, 9.37, listeners. That's just let your mind run over that number for a little bit. Beginning of this year, whoever thought, given the scenario we're in now, that we'd be seeing these levels, and yet here we are 9-10 months later, and VIX just flirting almost every week, yet another new low out there. So epic stuff. As we're talking right now, right around the 9.5 level here on the old VIX cash. So interesting stuff abounds out there. Let's start there, Mr. Meatball. Obviously, like I say, coming off the heels of the big Pro Trader Summit. So I'm assuming most of the people listening to this heard our live show we did last week from the event. If you want to do really quick recap here at the top, you can. Then what caught your eye in today's activity, sir?
The summer last week was awesome. We spent a lot of time just kind of looking at. It's interesting bringing unique people, but we had some Russell come in and talk some. I know you'll be shocked. Russell Rhodes came in and talked VIX for a little bit, and then we had some technical guys. I'm not much of a technical guy, so it's always interesting to bring in some technicians to kind of talk about what they're doing and what they're looking at. And then we had, myself, and then taught, every morning I was doing like some fun kind of live trading stuff where people could see what I was doing and how I think. And, there's a difference between watching me in a chat room and being in the room with me. I think you get a much different feel for how I think and what I'm looking at when I put on a trade. And then, we just had a nice group of people coming in and talk about, what they like to trade. And it was really fascinating. Last day we did a big round table, and myself and the cow guy and a few other people answered questions, and we got everything from what do you think of Bitcoin to what do you think of gold to should I only go naked long calls in the equity markets. It was the entire gambit, and along with a bunch of complex trades as well, that complex questions that we got as well. So pretty fascinating stuff.
I saw a photo of you and the cow guy up there. I can only say that man can rock a cow jacket like literally no other, because I've never seen anyone else rock a cow jacket before. So
true.
His sartorial choices are unique to him. Interesting. So I've had him when we had him on the radio. I've never actually. I think we had that one time at your event where he was on in person. So I have seen the cow jacket in all of its glory, but a lot of crazy stuff to parse there. And again, check out our live show we did last week. It's on the feed right before this one. So if you listen to this, you got access to that. So go check it out if you are indeed so inclined. Good stuff there. A lot of people on the panel with us. Some newcomers, always fun to have, and some good live questions. Your audience always brings it on the question front, so that's always fun as well. Ophir, like we mentioned, you guys have been busy over there back testing up a storm. A lot of opportunities, I would think, for back testing in these markets. What was catching your eye in today's activity, sir?
You know, I tried to look at some individual names, and so there's this small company, SNCR, Syncross Technologies, and this was a $50 stock last year, and it's $10 now, and they were supposed to be taken over, and they didn't. And then there's this little news blip that they're still looking at strategic partnerships, which was a nothing news story, and the stock's up 15%. But what I loved is that not only is the vol now at a 52-week high, but the skew is just absurdly bullish. You're looking at it's a $10 stock, and $20 strikes are bid, and it traded about 12 times normal volume. So it was just interesting to look. Let's see, it's about 10,000 calls to 1,600 puts. And then also looking at another individual named VHC. This is a company that just got wrecked because of some stuff with Apple, and they just popped today 40% because it looks like they're finally decided on this long-running patent infringement case. And so it's interesting to see vol rise 66 points. Again, another one of those 10x volume, but that's pretty much what I saw. Also, just broadly, it was interesting to see the markets hit all-time highs where every one of the FANG stocks was down. Pretty rare.
Yeah, there's been a weird separation there. Take a look at the price action and the vol action of Micron Technology. You want to talk about a well-known name that is exploding higher. That thing has been on a tear, and I'll tell you, customers were basically out buying every single 40 call they could. The weekly 40s, I think, traded almost 20,000 contracts. That was nuts. And here's another fun one that you've never heard of, X-Ray, that came out today. And they shook up. They fired their CEO, their CFO, their COO, and replaced them all. And shockingly, the stock was down. I know. Craziness, right? But, so that was another one that kind of caught my eye today.
X-Ray, I like that. I'm checking them out now. They make professional dental products and technologies, probably some dental X-ray machines. I would wager heavily in there somewhere. That's a good ticker they got their hands on. I'm sure a lot of companies would like to get their hands on X-Ray, but they got it. So hands off to Dentsply Sirona Inc. That's who that is. Gotta love, you mentioned the skew over here in some of these cheapy techs and biotechs. Skew becomes a bit of a relative term, obviously, in some of these names when it's pretty much just all one type of paper and the calls are just absurd. So those are always fun to look at from a skew analysis. Might be some interesting back testing opportunities there, and maybe crazy biotech skew trades, something along those lines, and how they performed pre and post these mad events, FDA, approvals, disapprovals, all that kind of crazy stuff. Speaking of crazy, we're also joined by Uncle Mike Tuso. Usually he's not too crazy, but you never know when he's outside the boundaries of St. Charles just what might happen. So, Uncle Mike, what caught your eye in today's activity, sir?
Well, first off, I want to say never before in the entire history of the stock market has there ever been a better time to sell than right now. That's an indisputable fact based on numbers because we're at all-time highs today. Tomorrow might be a better time to sell, though. You never know. But it's always exciting when we have new all-time highs in the marketplace. A couple other things that caught my eye today, in particular, the financials had a nice rally. If you look at XLF, the other thing that caught my eye was oil and energy kind of pulling back a little bit on the day. My beloved silver looks like it's starting to bottom out after the recent downturn with which it's had. So there's a lot of things going on right now. And then the one thing that I would add to what's more exciting than the VIX being at the 9 level for 4 days straight, well, I think that back in 2008 when the VIX was at the 80 level, I found that a little bit more exciting. I have to admit that.
It doesn't stop the excitement, though, all these anemic VIX levels, because like you mentioned, just exactly a week ago today, we saw VIX options putting up pretty much their all-time record, 2.6 odd million contracts in one day. Again, the lion's share off that one VIX whale who decided to roll his risk reversal with calls and keep all the strikes the same, by the way, just roll it from AK to DEES. That just shows, even in a size institutional product, one big player can come in and just change the game entirely. And that's pretty much what we saw this time last week. Speaking of numbers, it's that time of the month. The numbers are out from our friends over there at OCC, the Options Clearing Corp, of course. And actually, this year, looking pretty robust, surprise, surprise, given the fact that, bull markets are rally ho, so generally decent for options, but vol anemic, not so great for options. And yet, here we go at the conflux of the two, and looking pretty good. Overall, year to date, let's break it down a little. Yeah, overall exchange listed volume, 325 million contracts in September. That was down 9% from September 2016. That shows you how rocking last September was compared to this year, because this year wasn't super quiet from a September perspective. But overall, year to date, this is where the good news comes in, up about 2%, with about almost 16.5 million contracts so far in 2017. So if all holds true through the rest of the year, then we'll be up on the year, which is a good thing because we've seen some rough waters there in overall options volume last couple of years. Breaking it down a little bit further, getting a little bit more granular, equity options volume was 282 million contracts last month. That's a 12% decrease from September last year. That's probably where a lot of the downturn came. We also saw ETF options, 16% decrease from this time last year. But if there was another bright spot to be found, it was out there in the indexes. Indexes up 13%, and that kind of carried the day. Nearly 43 million contracts total out there. So interesting stuff. Also worth of noting, we mentioned VIX before. OCC also clears futures. Not a lot. They pretty much just clear VIX futures. But guess what? That was actually a good month for them as well. Up 1% from this time last year. So about 10.75 million contracts out there. Again, that's not all VIX, but I think it's somewhere 99% of that is VIX. So read into that what you will. Year to date, their ADV for futures is up 42% from last year. So not a bad year overall. Even the last month, not exactly a bright spot. But again, you're looking at year over year. Last year, pretty active. So keep that in mind. I don't know, maybe Ofer, any surprises to you from these numbers, or is this kind of what you've been expecting after cranking away on all your back tests for the past month?
The auctions, I thought back in 2008 and 9, I really thought options were going to take off a lot more than they did. And the market's grown, as we know, but hasn't really caught on and just tripled or something. So it's nice to see the average daily volume, those numbers you just said, is up a little bit. But in low vol, yeah, people are going to trade options less. But I'm still a little bit disappointed with the volume, honestly. It's not so disappointing year over year, but I would think that this derivative would get more interest, broadly speaking.
It's kind of funny. After coming out of the big options industry conference put on by the OCC, of course, back in May, things seemed so dire at that event. Everyone I talked to just seemed so down in the dumps, quite frankly, over where is the volume going to come from. This is going to be a terrible year, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. That any bright spot, even a 2%, we'll take it. That's better than I think most people were expecting, even a few months ago back in May when everyone pretty much had a pretty dire outlook for the rest of the year. So yeah, who would have thought we could be in these absurdly low levels with VIX for so long and yet still be putting up even any sort of gain, I guess, at this point is surprising. I don't know, Mark, did these numbers come as a surprise to you, or are you like Ofer? Maybe are you on the still disappointed camp?
Well, I am still disappointed, but I think we have some, the time when options would seem like the perfect time to start taking off was when the regulator stepped in and said, we're going to make sure you can't use these as a financial product. You go into Merrill, you go into any of the Schwab, even like Charles Schwab, you go into these big money managers, most of those guys can barely use options. That's a major issue. The other one is if I'm a major player and I want to get something done with all of the fragmentation, it's very difficult to get a liquid market. And a lot of the kind of mid-tier guys just sat back and raised up their hands. So I think the combo of regulators and our own industry shooting ourselves in the foot has been, maybe part of the reason why this growth has been so slow. Options were, there were weapons of mass destruction. Meanwhile, he's out there selling, the famed Warren Buffett is out there selling European over-the-counter SPX puts constantly. So it's a press that doesn't understand them, a Congress that villainized them, and regulators that stepped in to overregulate them, and then an industry that constantly cannibalizes its own ability to compete.
That's true. The regulatory kerfuffle, to put it euphemistically there, it certainly hasn't helped our cause, and no one really knows what the heck the future is going to bring, even next month is going to bring from a regulatory perspective. So it's kind of hard to dive in with both feet if you're an institution or a big trading firm. Say, I'm going to commit a lot of capital and resources to this strategy or this product or this market, because you don't know what the shape is going to be and what the structure is going to be, what the regulations are going to be in 6 months or a year. So that does have a bit of a cloud hanging over everything as well. But we are starting to see a little bit of resurgence with retail, so perhaps that will be the bright, shining spot going forward, where it was kind of a bit of an anchor in the last couple of years. Either way, let's go find some of our own bright, shining, and sometimes weird spots, because it's time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody. That funky tune means it's time for the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get a little weird, we get a little wild, we get a little whimsical, breaking down some of the paper that was coming across our own tape today. You guys ask us a lot. Someone asked us, I think, at the old Option Pit Pro Trader Summit, exactly how do we find and analyze this stuff? How do we get all the bid offer flow, all that good stuff? We answered it in detail on that episode. So if you missed it, check out that episode we did last Thursday. We get into it in some detail, how we do all this fun stuff here on the old Odd Block. Let's kick it off. Let's keep it in the fun realm for now, in the silly realm. Call it what you will. You guys always ask us about those, so we like to keep you informed on the important trades of the day. Of course, I'm talking about the Jan 2019 50 puts, the catastrophe puts out there in Tesla. Continued to trade. 97 hitting the tape today. 29,465 open so far. So OI got a little high, pushing 30,000, came back off a little bit again. Still only 29,500 of these crazy puts. Still the number one options position out there in Tesla. Nothing else really even comes close. It's pretty much 2x what the number two position is. So bear that in mind. You guys talk about Tesla all the time. You have questions about Tesla all the time, and yet what people are trading, it is that strike right there. So bear that in mind as you're looking at these. And about 14,250 of the Jan 2019 par puts also open. So a lot of funkiness out there in these cheapy puts. Oh, fair. I'm going to go out on a crazy limb here, and I'm going to say I don't even need the glorious back testing machine that is CML Viz. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say these trades probably not profitable over the long run. You think your back test agrees on that?
Yeah, if we're looking at naked 50 puts, then I'm going to go with no. I think it's interesting, actually, if you look at the open interest on the par puts and the 50s. And you've been watching the OI. It sounds like I have not. You've just brought this to my attention, but it looks like it could be a 1x2. And if it is a 1x2, so buying the par puts, selling the 50s, it's not the craziest trade I've ever seen in my life, depending on the prices. I mean, I don't think it's a high likelihood, but it's a lot less crazy than just naked. Oh, you're saying it's buying. Because naked buying of the Tesla 50 puts, that's insanity. If it's a 1x2 with the hundreds, semi-interesting, low probability, but yeah, I mean, it's just gigantic open interest, and it looks like the second largest open interest is the 100 put. So hey, if Tesla goes to 50, a lot of other things are going to go lower too.
Yeah, that's true. But you're right. There is some relation there. The 50 stuff was kind of opened on its own earlier, but we have seen, since we started profiling these, we have seen some decent size go up on the par puts as well, including one day about 1,500 going up on those. It wasn't 1 by 2, but it looks like, I agree with you, it looks like there might have been some ratios going up there at some time, even though the lion's share of the OI didn't go up that way. But it looks at it on the surface like it could be that. And I agree with you. That would make a heck of a lot more sense than just naked buying a bunch of 50 puts. You don't need a fancy machine to tell you that one, perhaps, not quite the road to magical profit that it may seem at first. All right, let's move on to some real stuff. Actually, keep it in that electric car realm. Everyone was just all over themselves, frothing at the mouth about the future of electric cars today. Perhaps not too surprising given the other news out there. People want to focus on something a little bit perhaps more positive or negative, depending on your views. We'll get to your views on this in a little bit, because I'm sure you guys have a bunch of them. But GM was in the news today. They were following suit. We saw the big news coming out of China a few weeks ago saying in the future they're going to pretty much be all electric. Now GM saying, yeah, we're going to get into that fray too. A little bit different time frame. I think they're saying by about 2023, I believe. So somewhere in 5 to 6 years, depending on when they implement that. But even in the next couple of years, probably going to start seeing a lot more electrics and hybrids rolling into the studios. So surprise, surprise. The market seemed to like that, rallying the stock up nearly 4.5%. Got up, it closed today 42.15, got as high as about 42.5, so pushing 5% on the day. So people liking the electric train. Go figure. This trick has worked for Tesla for how many years now? So why shouldn't it work for GM as well? You say electric, bam, stock's up. That's just pretty much a given. We saw a lot of crazy paper. As a result, this name averages about 31,000 contracts a day, doing over 4x that today, doing 161,000 contracts today, about almost, not quite 2 to 1, about 1.6 to 1 calls over puts, nearly 100,000 calls, 62,000 puts out there. So a lot of funky stuff. We saw pretty weird stuff too, not just your straight up buying calls, even though we did see those. But we also saw, it looks like maybe a combo or a conversion reversal going up on January, the Jan 50. Combo / conversion reversal, call it what you will, going up 17,500 times. Looks like paper lifting offers on the puts for 835, probably selling the calls for 14 cents. So doing that for 821. The stock was, I think, around 41.98 when it went up. So kind of funky. Would have been about a 19 cent for the conversion reversal there. Interesting stuff. If that was indeed, that wasn't the only paper we saw, but not by a long shot out there as well. We did see some straight up naked buying, but it was also in Jan, which is kind of interesting. Again, that kind of fits. This is a bit of a longer term play in GM. It's not happening tomorrow, so maybe piling into the weeklies, even though today would have worked out. But overall, if you want to play longer term, you got to go a little bit farther out. They're deciding to go out to Jan, apparently, was where the month of choice was. The Jan 42s also active. These were trading nearly 12,000 of these. There was size open interest in the strike, so 47,000. So that could have been an overrider, perhaps coming in and saying, you know what, because we closed north of 42 today, perhaps I was a wee bit aggressive with my strike selection. Perhaps I'll come back another day, live to fight another day. Also, talking about the 42 strike a little bit closer to home, the Dees 4042 looks like it might have been a collar going up there, or perhaps a bit of a piling on the upside there too. The Dees 4042 puts going up 8,500 times. Looks like paper lifting the offer pretty close to it for 88 cents, then coming in selling or hitting down the 45,000 of the 42 calls, doing that for $1.60. On the calls, opening paper on the puts, definitely only a couple hundred open there, but about nearly 7,000 open on the calls. So it is possible someone could be coming in and establishing a collar. That's interesting. It's an aggressive strike to do that. If you are, they could be doubling down on existing paper there, or they could be perhaps other paper. There was trading going on in this not too long ago. Back on the 20th, paper sold about 2,500 for 41 cents, and we also saw about 4,000 paper selling for 41 cents also on the 18th. So just in the past few weeks or so, we saw 6,500 piling into that strike. So maybe our friend, if he liked it at 41 cents, he's got to love it at $1.60. Either that or he had a funky maybe execution, and he could have been coming in and closing that one out as well. So a lot of interesting stuff going up out here. Mr. Meatball, let's start with you. I'm sure you guys were talking GM and electric cars in general in the chat room. What caught your eye out here in this activity, sir?
Yeah, it's, well, GM leaps are all the rage. That's all we trade here at Option Pit is
You love your Jan 50 conversion reversals in GM. You know you're all about that trade. That's what Carmen Line is, right?
The best. So this absolutely could be somebody. This clearly has some sort of stock position involved. You would never do this trade if you didn't have some sort of underlying axe to grind. Maybe it's a little bit of a weird collar, but it could be that. It could be some sort of kind of strange covered position. This one's a little perplexing, but one thing I can tell you is this is not the type of paper I'd piggyback because it 100% has the stock involved.
Yeah, and the stock has been on quite a tear. Today's move notwithstanding, it was trading pretty much $35 just back in mid to late August. So this thing has been on quite a tear, and then today's move piling in on top of that. So a good month or so to be out there in GM after being kind of sleepy, kind of waking up a little bit. Ophir, I don't know, a lot of paper out here. You can kind of pick your poison. People doing funky combo conversion reversals in Jan, just buying straight up calls in Jan, and also doing maybe a dubious collar in the D's. Any thoughts on these out here in GM, or maybe any other trades in GM that caught your eye?
I think it's actually three different trades. I think one of them, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think the Jan 50 looks like put buying, call selling. That might be a dividend play. I'm looking at GM's dividend history, and it's been pretty stagnant since 2016. They used to raise it pretty regularly. So that might actually be someone trying to play the reversal conversion. The stock has been ripping, as you mentioned. GM stock this is not normal for GM stock to be up this much this fast. So yeah, maybe that was a caller, or I'm talking about the DCs, the DC 4042, but it might have been closing the 42s. This is when I saw your write-up on this, when you looked at the action, I was like, every single one looks like a different position. So I'm going to say, because the stock has risen so quickly, callers possible. I think since the dividend hasn't been raised in a while, I think that might be in play. And yeah, there could be some naked bullish plays right now. I mean, GM stock is rising. It looks like a tech stock over the last 3 weeks. It's actually, it's way outperforming the market. So.
Yeah, they're definitely three separate trades. Even though the executions are weird, I kind of do tend to lean that probably that the call side of that quote-unquote collar is probably closing, and maybe they are deciding to shift to the puts, saying this thing's rallying a little bit. I overrode it maybe a little bit too aggressively, take the calls off, load up on some puts, and see if we can bet on maybe a little bit of a retracement, or maybe they do have the stock, and again, they're just worried that all these gains are going to go away. Either way, interesting stuff, or it could be piling on. These kind of paper is always funky. Yeah, you're right. Three separate trades, three weird ones. Let us know your thoughts. We could probably spend more time on this one, but we've got to keep rolling into other names that caught our eye, including good old UNG. This is the United States Natural Gas Fund. If 40-odd bucks was too rich for your blood, we got you covered here. $6.38, off about 3% on the day, listeners. This is the name that does about 26,000 contracts a day, so decent paper. Today doing a little bit more than that, about 143,000, about another 1.6 to 1. This time puts north of the calls. And another weird one from a timing perspective, from all sorts of reasons, and also size, which is why it came across our radar. It looks like someone deciding perhaps to roll some puts, some already longer-term puts, roll them out even farther, and perhaps add a collar to kick. We shall see. Started off coming across our tape here, the Jan 5 puts printing darn close to their bid there, doing it 34,600 times for a whopping 8 cents, listeners. OI pretty sizable, 52,000 contracts. So it has the whiff, it has the air of closing about it. And then we also saw a paper out there in April, in particular, 34,600 of the APE 5 puts going up for 19 cents. Again, pretty much a lift in the offer. No open interest to speak of out there, so probably opening. So it has a whiff of a roll. And then to add a little bit extra kicker to it, we also saw the April 8 calls going up. Looks like paper dumping them for 25 cents. 17,000 300 times. So if you can do that quick math, that's 1 by 2 there, or I guess 1/2 by 1 in this case on the calls. Not quite a full collar in that sense. OI there also pretty negligible. So clearly opening. So a little bit interesting to me because those puts didn't have much juice on them. They had a little bit more time left to go. Interesting timing there that he would indeed have chosen to roll if he did. And then also B, that he decided, let's add the old collar kicker on it. The Ape 8 is not exactly super optimistic, but then it has flirted with these levels before. It traded back in December of last year, about $9.50. So it has been up and north of. They actually traded $9.74 back in December, so it has been well north of that 8 handle. So this thing, of course, since pretty much the last 5 or 6 months, it's kind of been just kind of vacillating here between the 7 and 6 handle here. So our friend here perhaps deciding to keep the party alive and use the calls to perhaps finance a little bit extra. Interesting that he didn't do the same ratio on the calls and the puts. So all sorts of weird, all sorts of interesting. Why'd he do it now? Why'd he choose to add the call kicker? What the heck's up in UNG? Mr. Ophir, do you guys do a lot of back tests on really cheapy names like this, like $6 names, or do you typically do higher and loftier names?
We'll do it on low-priced names as long as there's liquidity in their strikes. So UNG's got strikes. It's got dollar strikes. We won't look at a $5 stock that has a $2.50 strike, a $5 strike, and a $7.50 strike, and they're all no bid or at $5 or something. So yeah, UNG is definitely liquid. It's got the strike, so we do. The trades are, I agree with you completely. The Jan 5 puts to the Ape 5 puts just looks like a roll. Buying Ape closing Jan. That's very much opening on the Ape 8 calls. And I don't, what did you think about those Ape 7 calls? 10,000 times, because most of that's opening too. It looks like I'm going to go out on a limb and say it may actually be maybe a call spread. Getting long the call spread, buying the 7s to sell the 8s on a ratio. It's my best guess, but this is just, look at the average volume. This is just size trading, 142,000 on an average of 26,000. This is a big day. I guess 70,000 of that is a roll, so it doesn't really count. But yeah, an interesting day for sure.
Yeah, when this first came across our tape, that 10,000 lot wasn't on there. So if it was a leg, it wasn't marked as such. I'll have to go back and see. But you're right, 10,000 of the 7s. We pretty much highlighted 3 legs. There could have been a mystery 4th that came in late to the tape there, 10, which makes it even more mysterious. 10,000. So there's ratios all over the place. Straight up roll 1-to-1 on the 5 puts. We said pretty much 2-to-1 or 1/2-to-1 really on the calls there. Then this Ape 7s, if they are related, I don't think they were, but I mean, it is coincidental paper, if not else. Then also going up 10,000 times, which doesn't even really relate to the other size. So weird stuff across the board. Mr. Meatball, take us home on this one. What do you think here, sir? All sorts of weird paper, weird number, weird sizes, call kickers with collars. What do you say, sir?
I don't think these definitely didn't go up at once, but there's been a lot of speculation that UNG could have a nice fourth quarter. There's some expectations that nat gas is going to catch a bid. This is a time when volatility tends to increase, and a lot of this could be set up around. The reason why you see a lot of this is a lot of it could be set up around, guys in the nat gas business or in gas delivery or you name it. Setting up trades and hedges, or you could be like the Rock Lobster and you could own a nat gas pump, and this is something you're doing to try and take advantage of things.
So you're saying it was the Rock Lobster adding that 10,000 left. That's what you're saying there. If I read between the lines there, that was him sneaking that 10,000 in between the calls and the puts. All right, one more here. In an interesting spot. This obviously spot got a lot of bad headlines today. This segment, of course, the gaming segment. We're finishing up here in Caesars Entertainment Corp, CZR. Obviously, a lot of bad headlines coming out of Las Vegas today in this neck of the woods, but that didn't stop Caesars from rallying. Actually opened about 1285, closing right around 1335 or so, up about 4 or 5%. And so not a bad day out there. And someone took advantage of this little bit of bloom on the rose to roll and do so with looks like a fair amount of house money. In particular, it was the OC 12 14 vertical that went up 15,000 times today. Paper blasting out near the bid. The 12s for $1.35, doing the 14 calls for 25 cents for, so doing that for $1.10 over there, obviously on that vertical. OI pretty sizable on the 12s, 20,000 and change. Not much on the 14s. So looks like has the whiff of, and probably is, a nice little roll. Again, Caesars obviously well north of that 12 strike, so those are pretty fairly in the money at this point. Would make sense if you want to keep that on to roll. Didn't go out, just went up, which is kind of interesting. Also worth noting, about 21,000 of these OC 12 calls traded back on August 24th, including a block of 15,000. Surprise, surprise. That was bought for 35 cents. So if that's the case, our friend's sitting on a nice buck today, and he decided to take it out. So nice $1.5 million. Not bad for about a month and a half's worth of work. So interesting stuff. Let's go here and pull up, see how Caesars has been doing over the past year. And it has been a nice run for this one since Election Day. Surprise, surprise. This thing is up pretty much almost 2x. So it's been a nice run. And our friend here, obviously smiling all the way to the bank. Take us home on this one, Mr. Ophir. You agree that our friend is a happy camper here with some cash in his pocket and continuing the party here in Caesar OC 14 calls.
Yeah, this feels like just winner, chicken dinner, right? I mean, this was just a huge trade, and he's closing it, rolling it. Would you say opened also 15,000 times a few weeks ago for 35 cents? I mean, yeah, that's a win, that's a close, that's a roll. That's what I see.
See, I don't even need the magical machine to tell me that these ones are winners. You know, the basic math works out pretty good on this one. Mr. Meatball, any thoughts on this before we roll on into the mail block?
Ophir hit it on the head.
All right, well, speaking of hitting things, let's hit some of your mail. It's time for the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mail Block. This is indeed the portion of the show where you guys take the reins, questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We welcome them all. You know how to hit us up at Options on Stock Twits or Twitter, Options Insider on Facebook, questions at theoptionsinsider.com, or if you're listening live, you can hit us up too. Some of those pesky folks in the live audience last week, they kind of hijacked the questions. You know, they had so many questions there. So you guys listening after the fact kind of got pushed to the wayside. I do apologize. That's what happens. People are in the room asking questions. They get moved up to the front burner. So we'll get to some of yours here today. Before we do that, let's pay off some of our other questions. We asked you guys last week, VIX products come in many flavors these days. So what's your poison? What's your favorite way to trade VIX? We gave you 4 standbys, VXX, UVXY, XIV, and SVXY. We said, by the way, no TVIX. Some of you took umbrage at that, but I just hate TVIX. I wasn't going to include it. All right, so it was actually closer than I thought. I thought VXX would kind of run away with it, but no. 36% for VXX, but very close, 33%, number 2. For UVXY, excuse me, I think some of Sebastian's guys must have snuck in on that one. 21% for XIV and 10% for SVXY. This week we asked you, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier here in the odd block, and indeed, or even earlier, everyone's got electric cars on the brain these days. We just talked about all that crazy paper going up in GM as a result. So we said, how are you guys? How are you guys playing this impending shift to electric cars in your options trading these days? Are you kind of doing the old faithful, selling Tesla puts, or maybe we've had to put them together, or buying calls? I know that's kind of heresy. A lot of you guys like to sell, but hey, we had to put them together. There's only so many, how much space we have in these Twitter polls. Or are you going maybe a little bit more newfangled, selling GM puts or buying the calls out there? Or are you on the electric cars are a fad, I don't care tip? Or do you have some other names that you're playing? I mean, obviously there's some other names out there you got to play in ADRs at that point, getting into, maybe Geely and some of these other names out there that are pretty big, but they're mostly set up overseas. So there's a lot to break in there. Again, this just went live before the show, so early voting here. But let's kick it off. Let's let our guest, Mr. Ophir, go first. What do you think is, well, first off, what would your pick be if you have one? And then B, maybe you have an alternative we didn't list here. That's good. And then B, what do you think is winning our poll?
You're talking about the electric vehicles one?
Yes, the electric vehicles one.
So I hope everyone's been doing risk reversals in GM. I mean, selling puts to buy calls recently. I don't know how you would have known that, but that would be awesome. If I had to choose one of these four, and I know one of the four is others, so I'm considering it three, I would have chose to sell puts and buy calls in GM just because I don't want to sell puts to buy calls in Tesla. I think the voting, I'm going to say the voting might say electric cars are a fad. I like that.
Interesting. Mixing it up. You always got to put in other when you're talking things like Tesla, because everyone's got some other name they want to throw into that mix. We've learned, give people an out with the other, and they're happy. All right. Let's see. Mr. Uncle Mike, what are you feeling, and what do you think our audience is feeling, sir?
For now, I feel electric cars are a fad, meaning that I don't have any major positions in anything that has to do with electric cars. And no, it's not me doing all those life insurance puts in Tesla, like you guys like to accuse me of doing. So I'm going to say that for the time being, not to say that it won't change, but I think for now, we have a lot of complacency out there with oil around the 50 level. And I might think that they're less of a fad if oil were to go back into the 100 level again, but that's another story. In terms of what our audience is doing, I will say that they are doing Tesla to go in with the electric car play.
Tesla love out there in our audience. Surprise, surprise. Last but not least, Mr. Meatball, are you feeling electric cars are a fad? Are you maybe on the GM train these days over there in Carmen Line? Are you playing Tesla, or you got something else up your sleeve? What do you got?
I'm up in the air on whether electric cars are a fad, but I can tell you Tesla's a fad. In terms of an investment, that thing is gonna land like that thing's gonna blow up like a Led Zeppelin. It is. They're terrible. It's just not a good value. So I think that you could look at a name like GM, or more interesting to me is like the Volkswagens of the world, some of the German cars. I don't know if you've seen I believe BMW has a Tesla killer they're starting to play with. And Porsche has a Tesla killer that's coming out. And both of those could easily, the Model S up to now has been the cachet, nice car that you could get that was electrified. If I can get a Porsche for electric car for about the same price, what direction do you think I'm going to go?
Yeah, or even a Volvo or others, other name brands that we know. And it is kind of weird because Tesla is mostly known for the sedans. They have the SUV, but it didn't really seem to resonate, even though everyone and their mother wants to buy SUVs these days. So maybe they're in shift with one fad, which is, of course, the trend towards electric, but they're out of shift, out of phase with the big trend towards SUVs. So, and then Model 3 is another sedan. So weird stuff there across the board. You guys, so far, again, it's early voting. We got pretty much the rest of the week to vote, but so far, 70% saying sell Tesla puts. I want to clarify, too, it's not do the risk reversal. It might look like that, but there's not a lot of room in these polls. It's sell puts or buy calls. You don't have to do both. That would be interesting, but no. Or you certainly would, as Ophir said, certainly would have done all right in GM selling puts and buying calls. So that would have worked out. Maybe we should say it is that, but it's not. So you have your choice: sell puts or buy the calls. You don't have to do both. So 70% saying that. 26% on the Ophir train saying electric cars are a fad. 4% saying they're doing the GM. No love for GM. I thought all the headlines today that would get a little bit more love. And I haven't checked the notifications for the others. I'm sure we got a bunch coming in. We'll probably hit those on these. So we got some. Let's see if we can squeeze in. I like the live people. I move them to the top. Let's see. We got Uncle Mike's buddy Salman Azhar again. He wants to know, when are ROKU stock options going to start trading? Your guess is as good as ours. Usually, it used to be a couple of weeks to a month. These days, they seem to be accelerating that stuff. The exchanges aren't fools. They have names like Snap and others. People are excited about them. SIBO, we've seen listing them in about a week sometimes. So if that holds true, if they can keep that schedule up, and obviously there's things that have to be considered. There's volume, there's float, there's all these other things that make it optionable to trade options on. So I haven't seen, in fact, I say that now, but watch, I'll check our inbox, and certainly we'll probably have a press release from the SIBO saying coming next week. But usually it's the SIBO who leads the dance on that, and usually lately they've got it up to a week, but figure usual time frame, probably 2 to 3 weeks is reasonable. I haven't seen any news on that yet, but they're not idiots. These are names that have some action, obviously. So they want to get them optionable as fast as they can. So figure 2 to maybe 3 weeks, and if we get lucky, we can maybe get it in 1. But I'm with you. A name that people want to trade, you got to get on there. All right, Intelligence Man. I like the handle. I'm not sure about his question. He wants to know, where can I see existing active option contracts? You can read that a couple of ways. You can read that as OI, which we talk about a lot. You can search for that. Any broker should be able to tell you that. Or volume. We do most actives every day on our site. Just look for the top 10 most actives. That's where we put it out every day. So that's pretty easy. We'll hit you the top 10 names and strikes, calls, puts, whatever's lighting it up that day. So, and other places will do that kind of stuff too, to see any sort of existing active. I don't know. Ophir, do you guys have any? I know you guys do the back testing. You guys put out any reports or anything like that that people can see of what's trading and that kind of stuff?
We don't do unusual volume. No, that's not what we're doing. We're looking for strategies essentially that work around certain events or certain times. So no good volume stuff in there other than, we'll notify people when they do a back test that there's no liquidity in something and that it's probably not a good back test, but no.
I don't know, Mark or Mr. Uncle Mike. It depends what he means by active. I'm assuming he means OI, but is that what you can get from your broker? But maybe there's some other sources you guys like to. Obviously, we do scans and things like Live Vol and others. I'm not sure if he wants to pay for that stuff, but where do you guys go when you want to see what's active?
Yeah, Live Vol. My ex-company, Live Vol is great. Live Vol Pro, Live Vol Core for retail investors, phenomenal. Use their built-in scans. Love it. Yeah,
I forgot you're a former Live Vol guy, so you know that platform pretty well. Let's see here. Let's see. We got time for. That's way too. Some of these questions are pretty epic. Let's see. Here's a quick one. Just a comment from Ron Yurovich. He's liking himself some Tasty. I heard talk about reduced ticket charges. Tasty works, has no ticket charge, $1 option per contract, no commission on closing trades. We like that. We like no commission on closing trades. Talking about this on our live show last week. He goes on to write, stocks have $5 commission. I trade 3-legged trades from opening to closing. My total commission is only $3.92. If you trade a lot, then Tasty Works. Trade a lot, try Tasty Works. You will see the difference. So there we go. We got a vote for Tasty. I don't think any of us have really played around with their platform too much, so we can't really speak to it at length, but there's a vote for other players. People are always asking us. There aren't many new players in the brokerage game these days, so new ones are certainly worthy of a look, particularly all the comments you guys have about other platforms and your little bugs you don't like on different platforms, how they treat your particular strategy or how they margin this or how they look at that. So maybe a new platform, maybe fun to look at, certainly play. I'm sure they must offer paper trading. So if they do, go check it out. And you too can play along. Speaking of play along, we got to play along into our final segment. It's time for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. We're in weird markets, all-time highs, VIX flirting with lows, paper coming left, right, and from all kinds of weird directions and weird names, so a lot to parse. Let's start with you, Uncle Mike. I'm assuming you've made it to your destination by now, and so you are safe and sound. What are you watching for the rest of the week, at least until we can get back together here on Thursday?
Well, I want to see how the events in Vegas play out. I want to see how the events in Puerto Rico play out. A lot of macro things as per usual. I want to see if we can continue to run these highs. All-time highs are an exciting time in the market in that you don't necessarily have a lot of levels of support from a technical standpoint because, well, it's an all-time high. Should you go with the first level of support? Do you have retracement? Well, it'll not be a factor if it's just a straight uptrend. You never know what's going to happen with something like that. So watching that, also watching just how oil's reacting. The 50 mark is always seems to be a key mark to it. Just keeping an eye on that as well. And we have a 9 VIX. That is exciting. However, not as exciting as an 80 VIX, I must confess.
That's certainly different layers, different levels of excitement. An 80 is a different beast entirely. You're right about the 50 oil. That's kind of been the kind of push-pull support resistance level we've been looking at for a while. Talk about that a lot, of course, on TWIFO, which I know you've been on recently, Uncle Mike, and we kind of have been north of that level lately. So interesting to see what that's been doing to the vol out there as a result. All right, Mr. Meatball, What's catching your eye out here in these ever lower VIX days, sir? How's that OC future looking at? How are the VIX futures holding up to your satisfaction, sir?
Well, the spread is still wide, which you'd expect with the VIX at 9.5, but it's below 2, which is an accomplishment. And yeah, OC futures look soft. VVIX still looks really bid. So, on its own, the curve is bid, but in relative sense, I mean, hedging with a future that's 11.40, if you consider that every VIX spike we go to 13 or 14, and the future has moved $1 or $2, I think you could make a pretty compelling argument that it's hedging's not that hard right now. I think that what I'm interested in is whether we can go an entire week with the VIX below 10. I'm not sure that's ever happened. Right now, we've gone 4 days in a row. So we've gone from Wednesday of last week through today. We go one more day. That would be kind of the backdoor grand slam of a week straight without the VIX above 10. But I'd like to see us go Monday through Friday, which could be just fascinating. Now, I believe non-farm payrolls on Friday. So the fact that they legitimately don't care that much with non-farm payrolls, I think it tells you that there's a level of complacency that's out there. So, like I said, things are cheap. I'd like to point out finally, before I let you take a look at the December future. Everyone's playing this seasonality play. Seasonality has not worked well in December in a couple of years, and in fact, the debt ceiling is going to expire on the 15th, which is, yes, they've got extraordinary measures they can use, but it's still worth kind of looking at from a perspective of, could that drive some action? My answer would be it absolutely could.
Yeah, the D's future right around 13.30 right now out there in VIX land for all of you saying VIX is too cheap. Again, like we say all the time, look at the futures. And last but not least, Mr. Ophir, what is catching your eye for the rest of the week, sir?
Yeah, I think the VIX is too low, and I think the VIX is too low because just the news that's coming. I mean, we've got the ADP report, we've got the jobless claims report, we've got Yellen speaking, of course, on Wednesday. We also have the market hitting all-time highs with the 5 FANG stocks, AA, so Amazon and Apple down. I think that could see VIX. I think all of that could see VIX go higher. I think it would be amazing to see 5 straight days in a week, Monday through Friday, of VIX below 10. But I got a funny feeling we're going to get a bump. Having said that, if I would have said that every week for the last year, I would have looked like a fool 51 out of 52 times or something. But it feels like we have reason to be above a 940 VIX right now, especially if jobless claims, let's say, derail Yellen's idea that we're going to raise rates in December, or even vice versa for that matter. So that's what I'm looking at. What does the macro picture tell us? It's been like 3 days, so we must have news from North Korea. Probably due Wednesday? News on North Korea. So
yeah,
we'll see.
He's overdue certainly. And you're right. If you had picked pretty much higher VIX every week, you would have sounded exactly like Russell Rhodes on our VIX, on our Volatility Views show, which he does that pretty much every week. He's been aiming for higher every week, and as a result, he has not exactly fared too well in our crystal ball challenge. Let's just leave it there. All right, that music means we've come up against it. We are done, listeners. I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for joining us. Before we go, really quickly, we go back around the horn, check in, see what everybody else has got cooking. We'll start with you, Mr. Ophir, as our guest. You mentioned that webinar at the top of the show. Give us a little bit of a hit on that again and what people can expect when they go check this out on the 18th, I believe, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We're holding it on the 18th. I'll just say it like this. Yes, very few times can you guarantee something. I can't guarantee you anyone's going to make any money. I can't even guarantee that you should trade, but I can guarantee you that if you watch this webinar, participate in this webinar, you will leave knowing, no matter what your level of trading is, you'll leave knowing more about options than when you started, a lot more. It's just remarkable what there is to learn about the option market when you look at it kind of on replay. And it's going to be well worth your time just to watch. Whether you want to do anything beyond that, well, that's up to you. But on the 18th. And you can register for the webinar on cmlviz.com/TOI for the Options Insider.
I like that. Replay mode for the options market. I never thought of it that way before, but you're right. There's a lot of insight to be gained from a little bit of slow-mo instant replay. I like that. Get your learning on. Get your back testing on. October 18th, cmlviz.com/TOI. TOI, the Options Insider. I like that too. All right, and Mr. Meatball, since we're talking education, if I want to go to the old pit and get some learning on, where could I go? What could I do?
Yeah, just check out our blog. We got another webinar coming up this Thursday on breakout trading, which should be fun. And, just read our blog every day. We try or twice a day. We try and post something minimum once, generally twice a day. And so just go to optionpit.com/blog, check things out.
Check them out over there. I think you got an Easy VIX webinar coming up over there. You can check out over there as well. And Mr. Rock Lobster is working hard on that. And, of course, the ever-popular Row webinar perhaps making a return appearance one of these days. All right, and last but not least, Mr. Uncle Mike, we heard some talk about ticket charges. If I, too, want to reduce my ticket charges, where perchance could I go?
Well, you can give me a call by all means. And if you think that the $3.80 for a three-legged butterfly is impressive, how would you like to do on the way in and on the way out $2.80? Because it's 35 cents a contract. Let's say you're doing a one lot. That comes out to $1.40 on the way in, $1.40 on the way out. If you're 5 cents or cheaper, it would not be a cost on your way out. So with that being said, you want cheap, I can possibly give you cheaper. Now, of course, there are fees involved and only certain people qualify for such things. But if you are interested in learning about such a thing, feel free to give me a call at 312-212-3531 or shoot me an email at mtosaw@rcmfs.com.
There you go. Hit the man up. I know a lot of you have already. Let him roll your puts for you. Let him get some cheap options trading for you too. While you're at it, mtosaw@rcmfs.com. On behalf of Uncle Mike and the Meatball and Ophir, and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading, streaming, subscribing to the show, and of course, for sending in such great questions. Keep them coming. And we'll see you all on Thursday for more of the Option Block.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.